It started subtly, like most nightmares do, a whisper in the dark, my name, but not my mother's voice. I dismissed it, just the wind or a dream lingering. Then it happened again, clearer this time, from the hallway. I called out, "Mom?" No answer. Just that faint, distorted echo, like my own voice played back through static. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled the blanket tighter, trying to convince myself I was safe, that it was nothing. But the sound? It wasn't just my name anymore. It was a low, guttural imitation of my dog's whimper right outside my bedroom door. My dog was sleeping at the foot of my bed, a warm weight against my feet. The whimper came again, softer this time, but unmistakably from the hallway, just outside my closed door. A cold dread seeped into my bones, a much colder dread than the night air. My hand, trembling, reached down, finding the coarse fur of Buster, my golden retriever. He let out a soft, sleepy sigh, his head still resting on my ankles. His fur was warm, his breathing steady. He was here. He was right here. So, what was out there? My breath hitched. My eyes, wide and unblinking, stared into the oppressive darkness of my room. The whimper outside stopped. A silence descended, thick and suffocating, far worse than any sound. Every nerve ending screamed at me to pull the blanket over my head, to disappear, but my body felt like a statue, rooted to the spot by an invisible paralyzing force. Then a new sound, a faint scratching, like fingernails dragging lightly across wood. It was coming from the door, the very door I had locked just hours ago. No, not scratching, it was tapping. A rhythmic, deliberate tap, tap, tap. It sounded almost like a child's knuckles, hesitant, wanting to be let in. My mind raced, trying to find a rational explanation. The house settling? A branch hitting the window? But the sound was at the door, not the window. And it wasn't the house settling. It was too precise, too intentional. The tapping stopped as abruptly as it began. My heart was a frantic drum solo in my chest, echoing in my ears. I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment, wishing, praying for it all to be a dream. When I opened them again, the darkness seemed to press in closer, more menacing. And then it whispered, my name again. But this time, it wasn't a distorted echo. It was a perfect imitation of my own voice, a breathy, fragile whisper, as if I were outside my own door, calling to myself. "Sarah?" it breathed. A shiver, colder than anything I'd ever felt, traced a jagged path down my spine. It knew my name. It knew my voice. Panic began to claw its way up my throat. I wanted to scream, but no sound would come out. My mouth was dry, my tongue thick. I could feel the individual hairs standing up on my arms, a primal instinct screaming danger. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with an unseen presence. I could almost feel eyes on me, watching from the other side of that thin wooden barrier. What was it? What did it want? Was it trying to lure me out, to make me open the door? The thought alone was enough to keep me absolutely still, utterly terrified, clutching the blanket as if it were the only thing separating me from whatever unspeakable horror lurked just beyond my reach. I clutched the blanket tighter, my knuckles white against the faded fabric. My eyes were still fixed on the door, a dark, rectangular void in the gloom. Every shadow seemed to twist and writhe, morphing into grotesque shapes, playing tricks on my terrified mind. I squeezed my eyes shut again, willing myself to wake up, to be anywhere but here, trapped in this nightmare. But when I opened them, the door was still there, and the oppressive silence was even heavier than before. It felt like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for my next move, or perhaps for its own. Then a new sound, one that ripped through my carefully constructed wall of denial. A soft, weary sigh, followed by a familiar, gentle voice. "Sarah, honey, are you awake?" My mother. My heart leaped, a flicker of hope amidst the crushing fear. But then it twisted into something colder, something far more sinister. That wasn't her voice, not really. It was too perfect, too smooth, lacking the slight rasp she got when she'd been asleep for hours. It was a flawless imitation, a digital copy of her voice, devoid of her warmth, her life. I heard a noise, the voice continued, still soft, still gentle. "Are you all right? Is Buster okay?" It even mimicked her concern, her particular way of asking. But I knew deep in my gut that it wasn't her. My mother never came to my door in the middle of the night, not unless there was a storm, and even then she'd usually just call out from her own room. And she certainly wouldn't mention Buster, who was now stirring slightly at my feet, his tail giving a soft thud against the mattress. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead, trickling down my temples. It was learning. It was adapting. It was using my deepest attachments against me. This wasn't just some random echo anymore. This was intelligent, malevolent. It was trying to lure me out, using the one voice I would instinctively trust. My breath hitched again. I couldn't answer. I couldn't make a sound. Any response, even a whisper, would be an acknowledgement, an invitation. The silence stretched, unbearable, punctuated only by the frantic thump of my own heart. The voice outside spoke again, a little louder this time, tinged with a manufactured worry. "Sarah, open the door, sweetie. Let me in. I'm worried about you." The words were like poison, dripping with false comfort. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to stay still, to pretend I was still asleep, to be anything but responsive. I squeezed my eyes shut once more, pressing my hands over my ears as if I could physically block out the insidious imitation. But the sound, whether real or imagined, seemed to penetrate my very skull. It was inside my head now, a chilling echo of my mother's voice, pleading with me to open the door. I clamped my hands tighter over my ears, trying to block it out, but the voice persisted, a phantom sound burrowing into my brain. "Sarah, are you really asleep? I just want to check on you. It's cold out here." The manufactured concern was almost worse than outright malice. It was trying to break me, to wear down my resolve with the very thing that was supposed to protect me, my mother's love. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it might burst through my ribs. I wanted to scream, to tell it to go away, to leave me alone. But I knew that would be a mistake. Any sound, any movement might give it the advantage it sought. Buster, still curled at my feet, let out a low growl, a rumble deep in his chest. His head lifted slightly, and his ears perked towards the door. My only comfort, my loyal companion, was now sensing the threat too. A wave of protectiveness, cold and fierce, washed over me. I couldn't let it get to him. I couldn't let it get to me. I had to stay absolutely still, absolutely silent. The voice outside changed again, a subtle shift in tone, a hint of impatience creeping in. "Sarah, this isn't funny. You know I don't like to be out in the hallway for long." It was playing on my guilt now, on the fear of upsetting my mother. But the details were wrong. My mother would never say that. She would just go back to bed. This thing is overplaying its hand. A new sound accompanied the voice, a soft, almost imperceptible scrape against the wood of the door, just below the handle. It was as if something was pressing against it, testing its strength. My breath hitched again. Was it trying to force its way in? The thought sent a fresh wave of terror through me, a primal fear of being breached, of my sanctuary being violated. My eyes darted to the door, straining against the darkness, trying to discern any change, any movement. The scrape came again, a little firmer this time, followed by a faint, almost imperceptible creak from the door frame itself. It wasn't just talking anymore. It was trying to get in, and it was using my mother's voice to do it, a cruel, twisted mockery. I squeezed my eyes shut, tears pricking at the corners. This wasn't a dream. This was real, and whatever was out there, it wasn't going to give up easily. I had to hold on. I had to pretend I wasn't there. I had to be invisible. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to make a noise, to somehow scare it off, but an even stronger instinct told me that silence was my only shield. My survival depended on me being nothing, an absence, a ghost in my own bed. The pressure against the door intensified, the wood groaning softly in protest. The pressure against the door intensified, the wood groaning softly in protest. A splintering crack, sharp and sudden, tore through the silence, making me jump. My eyes flew open, fixed on the door. A thin, jagged line appeared near the doorknob, a dark fissure against the pale wood. The voice outside dropped its pretense, the soft maternal tone melting away into a low, guttural growl that was undeniably not human, yet still laced with echoes of my mother's voice, twisted into something demonic. "Let me in," it rasped, a chorus of whispers underlying the main sound, like 1,000 tiny voices struggling to form words. Buster, who had been a low rumble of comfort, suddenly exploded. A furious, frantic bark ripped through the air, completely unlike his usual gentle nature. He launched himself off the bed, a streak of golden fur heading straight for the door, snarling, teeth bared. He slammed his body against the wood, a desperate, valiant attempt to defend me, to keep whatever horror was out there. The door shuddered violently under his impact, and the crack near the doorknob widened, a small piece of wood detaching and falling to the floor with a tiny clatter that sounded deafening in the charged silence. Then, through the new, jagged opening, something moved. Not a hand, not a claw, but a tendril, impossibly thin and black, like a wisp of smoke given physical form. It snaked through the crack, exploring the space, twitching and probing. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just pressing against the door, it was reaching, it was seeking entry. The tendril paused, then seemed to taste the air, before, slowly, deliberately, it began to expand. It wasn't growing, it was unfurling, twisting and thickening, morphing into something vaguely familiar, something that made my stomach churn with pure revulsion. It was taking on the shape of my mother's hand, pale and slender, but wrong. The fingers were too long, the joints too pronounced, and the skin seemed to shimmer with an unnatural sheen. It wasn't real, it was an imitation, a grotesque mockery. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. My body was locked in a cage of terror, every muscle screaming in silent protest. Buster continued his furious barking, his body pressed against the door, trying to bite at the encroaching horror, but his teeth seemed to pass through the shadowy form. The mimic's voice, now a wet, slithering sound, echoed again, right outside the door, right next to the grotesque hand. "Sarah, you belong to me now." The words weren't spoken, they were felt, vibrating through the very air, burrowing into my mind. The imitation hand twitched, and the doorknob, with a slow, agonizing groan, began to turn. The doorknob turned, slowly, agonizingly, and the door creaked open a sliver. A breath of icy air, smelling of damp earth and something metallic, seeped into my room. But there was nothing there. Just an inky blackness that seemed to swallow the faint light from my alarm clock. The grotesque hand, the tendril, it retracted, slipping back into the void. Buster continued to bark, a frantic, desperate sound, until his voice was raw. I don't know how long I stayed frozen, staring at that sliver of darkness, listening to Buster's hoarse cries. Eventually, the first rays of dawn painted the sky, a weak, pale light that chased away the deepest shadows. The door was still ajar. Nothing was there. But it wasn't gone. It never truly left. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside my window, every time my mother calls my name, I hear it. That perfect, chilling imitation. I check the locks 3 times now every night. I sleep with Buster pressed against me, his warmth the only thing that keeps the cold at bay. I hear whispers in the quietest moments, just at the edge of hearing, like a radio dial searching for a frequency. Sometimes I swear I hear my own voice calling to me from an empty room. It knows my name, it knows my voice, and it's still out there, waiting for me to open the door, waiting for me to let it in. Have you ever heard something that wasn't there? A sound so perfect, so familiar, yet utterly wrong. Have you ever felt something watching you from the dark, mimicking your deepest fears, just waiting for its moment? I wonder if you've ever truly been alone, or if something else was there, just beyond your sight, learning your patterns, perfecting its imitation.